Hello, and welcome back to the Irish Tennis Updates podcast. My name is Adam, your host. This week I have been chatting to Gina Niland. I'm really excited to bring you this episode. Gina is a legend of Irish tennis. She has the most Fed Cup caps, the most Fed Cup wins, and she has been ranked in the top 500 in singles and doubles in the world. I really enjoyed talking to Gina and getting to know a bit more about her early days in tennis, both in England and then also after her family moved back to Limerick. We talked all about the Fed Cup, about her various experiences in Fed Cup over the years, some of the highs and lows of tennis life and life on the pro tour. We also touch on how tennis is still a big part of Gina's life, and also a couple of topics in Irish tennis. What has changed since Gina's been involved in tennis, and some of the things that should maybe be done over the next few years to come. Really enjoyed this chat. I think you will too. And here we go. Here is Gina Niland. All right, Gina, a big thanks for coming on to talk today. How are things with you?
Good, Adam. Thanks. Really happy to be here talking to you today. As I said, I've been listening to your interviews over the last while, and been really interesting and informative. So I'm delighted that you asked me on to chat today. So thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm delighted to have you on. And just to start, just to get back to kind of those early days of tennis, I know that your family kind of would have been involved in tennis a bit, and a very kind of sporty family. So like, if you look back, what are those earliest tennis memories that you have?
Yeah, I mean, would be back in the UK. So this story has been told before, by my brothers who've been on. But we moved to the UK in the kind of mid 1970s, and we were living initially in Croydon near London, and then we moved to Birmingham, where we were for the bulk of the time that we were. And as it happened, we were living across the road from the Edgbaston Priory Club, which in Birmingham, which is kind of one of the most prestigious clubs in the UK, and a really big, active tennis club. And we literally lived directly across the road from the club. So really the tennis journey for me started there. I as my mum tells it, she sent me over for, the kind of group kids tennis lessons when I was about 8. And I think the coach there sort of said to my mum that I had kind of good hand-eye coordination, could potentially be quite good. And mum kind of took that on then and started playing with me a little bit herself. And at around the same time, my brother Ross, who's 2 years younger than me, started playing kind of around the same time. So I had him there as well, kind of to play with and spar with. But really, the beginning was there in the Edgbaston Priory Club in Birmingham. My parents obviously were, big sports people. My dad, a very good Gaelic footballer, played for Mayo. Mum was a very good tennis player, interprovincial, also county squash player in England when we were over there. And just, we had a general, very kind of a sporting upbringing, and that was the kind of what we did in our house. So being obviously, as I said, across the road from that tennis club, and then playing with mum as it started off, and then Ross got involved. And a little bit later on, my dad kind of got involved then as well, on the kind of coaching side of things. But yeah, it started from there. I kind of progressed in the club, started playing a bit. Ross was particularly good as a young junior, so he was the kind of shining star really early on. He was a very strong kind of under 8, under 9, under 10, and it took me a little bit longer, I think, to get going kind of on the tournament side of things. Certainly under 10, I don't think I was showing any huge promise at that stage, but by the time we kind of got to under 12, I kind of improved quite a lot. And actually in my second year under 12, which is our last year living in Birmingham, I got picked, I think over that winter, I got picked for kind of the regional squad, the Warwickshire squad or something like that. And in the April of my last year under 12, the British under 12 championships were on in Edinburgh. And I went up and played in that, and I was unseeded, and I actually got to the final of it. So I made a kind of a big breakthrough over that winter of my last year under 12. And it really kind of went on from there. As a result of getting to the final of that, I was picked to actually play for Great Britain. We were still living there at the time, so I was eligible to play. So I went over to France and played the European under 12 championships in July. That would have been 1984, so a long time ago. And we actually moved back to Ireland then about 2 months later. So we were back in Ireland then end of August, beginning of September, and that would have been me the time I would have been starting secondary school. So my parents were Irish. They had always intended coming home at some point, but we ended up staying in the UK for about 10 years. So once we moved back to Ireland, then I was straight into the kind of Irish tennis scene, I suppose, playing all the Irish tennis tournaments, and really it just progressed from there. But that was the early days, I guess, the starting point.
Yeah. How do you think things changed when you did move back to Ireland? Obviously, you had got quite good in the UK, and like, do you think how were
very different? It was very different. So, I mean, the setup in the UK, obviously, the money situation in the UK is a completely different setup to Ireland. So while I was on, county squads over in the UK, we had indoor courts galore. There were indoor courts in the local club, Edgerton Priory. All the regional squads were in a big indoor centre, nearby in Birmingham. So facilities wise, I think was the main difference that we noticed when we moved back. So we moved back to Limerick in 1984, and a couple of local clubs are, very good tennis clubs, Catholic Institute and Limerick Lawn Tennis Club we would have been in, but no indoor facilities, anything like that. So quite different in terms of facilities, and really at that stage as well, there wasn't really a structure in terms of squads or anything like that locally. So I don't think there was any Munster junior squad at that point in time, or even an Irish junior squad then. So it was very much up to yourself to organise everything, up to your mum and dad to organise it. Mum tells stories of trying to get me matches with the men in the local club, that kind of stuff. But really, that the huge thing for me, and I think critical to my tennis development, was having my brother Ross, particularly, who was 2 years younger, but basically the same standard as me, and having him as a sparring partner at home. And about 2 years after we moved back to Limerick, we put a tennis court actually in our back garden. So that was massive. So I had a sparring partner and I had a court outside the back door. So, I had no excuse really. So even if we had only had 40 minutes or a half an hour, with no floodlights, and when we came home from school, we'd go out and do our half an hour, 40 minutes. And I think that was critical. I think if I hadn't had Ross as that sparring partner to play with, I don't think I would have gone where I went. That was so important. And then, obviously for variety, that I would go into Limerick Lawn and play some of the adults in there. I kind of progressed quite quickly as a junior. Then I was sort of getting to kind of winning senior tournaments at 14, 15. So I had almost outgrown the kind of junior scene really by my mid-teens. So it was important to get more variety there as well. So yeah, where I could, I played with the men, and the men in the tennis club really was what I did to progress from there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, because I was interested to ask about, you mentioned Ross there as kind of being obviously important to your development, and like I was interested to ask about that kind of effect that the your brothers did have, because obviously Conor, I guess, was a few years behind, but like how big do you think that was? That like I guess it was like a sparring partner, but like it kind of spurred you on as well, like to try and stay better than them, younger than you, kind of coming up.
The two of us spurred each other on really. I mean, Conor was a different age group really. I mean, Conor's 9 years younger than me, so my kind of serious tennis practicing days, in my teens and that, he was too young to be involved in that really. So I think he got the benefit of the knowledge of everything that we went through. But in terms of him sparring with us, no, that didn't happen. But certainly for me and Ross, it was fantastic to have each other, and we were really, really, really lucky to have that. And for sure, it had a huge impact on my tennis career, definitely.
Yeah. And obviously, even you mentioned there, like how you would have gone and played some of the adults in the local clubs, and I think that's a great thing. And even as we were recording this, I think it's yesterday that the announcement came out from Tennis Ireland about the World Tennis Number, and I guess it's promoting that kind of thing of it doesn't matter what your gender or your age, which I think is great to bring that in and see that used more widely. And I guess it's your story is kind of it's an advertisement almost for the success of that model.
And I mean, there were, some guys in the club who were very happy to play against me. And that, my mum, it was actually funny because this morning I was talking to my mum about this new rating system, and we were saying, you'd be able to play with any gender, any age. And she was remembering back in the day, back in Limerick Lawn, when she was trying to get me involved, I think in one of the men's ladders or something like that in the club. And there were a few people in the club who objected to it. Probably, you can kind of understand it. They probably didn't fancy playing a 13, 14-year-old girl and maybe losing. But yeah, I hope that this new ranking system will work for that. But I think mostly you'll still end up playing competitions within your age group, and your own gender. But if it could, I think for internal club events, it could be great, for getting more variety and more match play. So yeah, I hope it works. Yeah, I was interested to see it over the last couple of days.
Yeah,
been reading
definitely. Yeah. And then just to bring it back, I guess, a bit more generally to your junior days, what kind of other, as you got a bit older and maybe you were competing even more, what other memories do you have of those junior days?
Yeah, so when we arrived back in Ireland, that 1984, I think it was in August 1984, the first tournament I played was junior fits in Ireland. So that was literally about a week, I'd say, after we moved home. And that was the under 12s. And I got to the final of that. I lost to a girl called Michelle Egan that I'm sure a lot of your listeners will remember. And myself and Michelle were good sparring partners there for a couple of years. I actually played her in the under 14 final the next year and lost again. And that was both of our first year under 14. And then our second year under 14, I won that year. I beat a girl called Suzanne Kelly in the final, who's a good friend of mine still to this day. And then the year after that kind of year, when I turned 14, I improved quite a lot. I got a bit physically stronger, bigger. I was playing, started to play adult tournaments, got picked on the Munster senior team, that kind of thing. And actually my first year under 16, I moved up and played the under 18s. I'd been doing quite well sort of in senior events, and we felt that I was ready for the under 18 event actually. And my first year under 16, I got to the final of the under 18s. I lost to Jenny O'Brien in that. And then my second year under 16, I actually won the under 18 event. So I progressed quite quickly, and in my teenage years was playing obviously senior interprovincial, all the junior international stuff, and then when I was 16, I actually got picked on the senior team. So my first senior cap, I played a triangular for the triangular event, and then subsequently my first Fed Cup the next year was my first year. I think first under 18. I was still 16. Would have been 17 later on in the year, and I got picked for Fed Cup that year. That was in 1989. So quite kind of quickly progressed in those teenage years, and made quite a lot of progress at that time. So obviously getting picked for Fed Cup was a huge thing. It was a big year for me, 1989. I got picked for my first Fed Cup, as I say, but I also got to play Junior Wimbledon that year. So that was my first year under 18. So Junior Wimbledon is something that will stay with me forever. Amazing experience for, people out there who don't know. It's on the second week, I should say, of the main event. So you're on the courts, the other matches are going on around you. The junior events are out on the outside courts alongside the other events. You're in the same kind of change room areas, same eating areas, an amazing experience. A little bit overwhelming in some ways. I know I played an Italian girl in the first round who got to the final subsequently, and I had a good game with her. I lost 5-2, but I remember just feeling very distracted in the match. I don't know if people know the outside courts in Wimbledon. There's people walking everywhere, hanging over the fences, and it was just very overwhelming, but like a great experience. And I played in the doubles as well, and actually won a round in the doubles over there. So yeah, that was a very memorable week. And then a couple of months later, then I went up to my first Fed Cup, which was really quite an incredible experience in those days. And I know it's called Billie Jean King Cup now, but back then the Fed Cup, and this was the last couple of years this happened, the Fed Cup was held in one venue. So every team from around the world came to one venue and played a knockout event. So in 1989, I got to go to Tokyo in Japan for Fed Cup, which was just amazing. I look back now and go, wow, as a 16-year-old, I probably thought, actually, this is the life of a tennis player. This is normal. But when I look back now, wow, that's amazing. So we were a team, myself, Leslie O'Halloran, Jenny O'Brien, and our captain was Bernie Griffiths. So we went over there and we played in that. And that was, as I say, just amazing. And we were there, with all the top players playing alongside us. So Arantxa Sanchez, who would have been one of the top women in the world at the time, Chris Everett was still playing, Martina Navratilova was still playing. They were towards the end of their careers then, but they were still representing USA. So just to be mingling with those people was, amazing. So the next couple of years, actually the next year, so that was 89, 1990 then, I was doing my Leaving Cert that year, and I didn't actually get picked on the Fed Cup team that year. And then after that, 1991, I played every year then until 2001 after that. So I think 91, we were in Nottingham, and I think that was the actual last year where they had it as a world group event where everybody went to one venue. And again, Steffi Graf was there at that one. Incredible stuff. And after that, they compartmentalized it. They broke it down into regional, Euro Africa zones and all of that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, Fed Cup was very special to me. I always, particularly enjoyed it. If I look back at my tennis career, I would say my happiest tennis memories were the Fed Cup trips. They were a lot of fun, and I love the team aspect of it. You know, you don't always get that. Tennis is a very singular individual sport. Oftentimes your only supporters are your family at the side of the court. So to play in a team environment, you know, was really special. I really enjoyed those trips, and I think that's why I played well at Fed Cup and had, you know, a good record in it. So yeah, good times.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I didn't realize about the Fed Cup, how that was done those first couple of years of bringing everyone. I never realized that's crazy, and especially going all the way to Japan. I guess only 16 was
16
crazy.
Something else. Yeah. So when I look back now, I appreciate it now. Looking back, I maybe didn't appreciate it quite as much when I was 16.
Yeah. And on Fed Cup, like I know obviously you did play for a lot of years, as you said, and played like a lot of ties and a lot of wins along the way. But in terms of Fed Cup, do you think there was, obviously, you know, playing for so many years, you would have got to play with a lot of different players, and kind of some people would have come and gone kind of throughout the years. It would have been different captains, I imagine. Was there a specific year or kind of campaign that you kind of look back at as a favourite from all those years?
There are a couple. So that last year in Nottingham we had, so I spanned, I suppose, a couple of different eras of players. So there was initially when I played, you know, there was the kind of the Leslie O'Halloran's, the Siobhan Nicholsons, those guys. And when we played in Nottingham that year in 1991, that was the last year that it was you know, as I said, everybody in one venue. We lost in the first round to Greece, I remember, but we actually got to the final of the consolation event. So we went on and won another 4 matches after that, and we had great team spirit that year. It was Siobhan Nicholson, myself, Leslie O'Halloran, I think Fiona Long from Limerick actually was on the team that year as well. So that would be a memorable one, just because we kind of got through to the final of the consolation. So we were there on the last day playing, you know, a match, you know, with people watching. So that was a really good one. And then the kind of subsequent years after that, there was one particular year we were in La Manga in Spain. It was myself, Annie Van Doyle, I think Karen Nugent and Kelly Ligon possibly. So that would have been later on, maybe I'm going to say 98, something like that. And again, like that, we got to the kind of the playoff match. We had a good run, you know, won 4 or 5 matches and got to the playoff match. And I just remember that particular one. And Pete Lowther would have been the captain in those kind of mid 1990s years. And he was great captain. And we had great rapport there. So there would have been a few of us around that era. So myself, Yvonne Doyle, Karen Nugent, Claire Curran as well would have featured kind of regularly at that time, as well as Leslie a little bit earlier on, and Siobhan. And then there would have been the odd other person who would have maybe played 1 year, but we were the kind of core group, I suppose, through those kind of mid 1990s years. So so look, I really enjoyed it, but they would be kind of the 2 standouts, I guess. La Manga, which was, you know, obviously a lovely venue as well. I don't know if any of you know it. It's down in South Spain. It's a very nice kind of holiday resort and tennis academy kind of set up down there. So it was lovely. And that year in Nottingham, obviously, where we did well. So yeah, they would be kind of 2 of the standout ones there, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess just to change it a little bit and just look at kind of more general of kind of the professional tournaments, playing some of the kind of the futures, the satellites. Like, how different is that to the highs of the Fed Cup? Is that kind of tricky then to go to that? Those kind of things?
So what I did was when I finished school, I was obviously playing very well around that time. So I think I probably peaked really in my late teens, and I did my leaving cert, and I decided to defer. I got a place in UCD, but decided to defer for a year to play tennis and just see how I got on and go full time and play. So I went out and played, and look, I was totally on my own, traveling most of the time. Siobhan Nicholson was playing a bit at the time as well. We tried to kind of coordinate to go to a few tournaments together, and I had, you know, some success. On my highest ranking was 470, so I did okay. I think I would have benefited from somebody traveling with me, a coach, something like that. I was very much kind of a load agent out there on my own. If you looked at girls from the other countries, they all had kind of entourages with them, or they were traveling with groups of players, a coach with them, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas I was there on my own. Actually, there was an interesting trip I went on to Algeria in 1990, I think late night, kind of September, October 1990. So it was one of the first ones I went out on. And RTE, so Caroline Murphy, who was a sports producer in RTE at the time, she's mum of actually Sean O'Rourke and some of the guys, tennis player guys. She traveled with me actually to do a kind of a documentary on the week in the life of a touring tennis player. And she came with me to Algeria, which wasn't the greatest of venues now, I have to be honest. It was very run down, very kind of poor area, not great facilities at the club, terrible hotel. There was one particular night where we woke up in the middle of the night to find sewage had flooded the hotel. We had to change hotel in the middle of the night. The place was a hellhole basically. But Caroline got great coverage for the week of this, not very glamorous lifestyle of a girl out on her own playing on the tennis tour. But I actually did quite well that week and I got to the final. But I do remember, preparing for the final match, and I had to go and knock up on the wall, as my warm-up. So that kind of summed up my sort of touring tennis experience. Was very much a kind of a solo effort. And I guess different to the experience that my brother Connor would have had. I guess he got the benefit of the knowledge that mum and dad gained from me going out on my own and struggling a little bit. And that really you need to have somebody with you and you need to have somebody traveling with you. But for them at the time, it wouldn't have been possible to travel with me. I was the oldest of 4 children. They had 3 younger children all in school. Dad was working. There's no way they could have gone and traveled with me or anything like that. And probably didn't realize that maybe you kind of need somebody with you. But having said that, I did it for nearly 2 years. I traveled all around the place. It was a fantastic experience. I got to two ITF finals, singles finals. I won 2 doubles events, ITF, got to 470. So not bad. But when I look back, I think I probably would have done better if I'd had kind of a proper structure around me and a proper setup like that. And I think one of the reasons I did well in the Fed Cup and the team events is because I did have that structure there. There was a coach there. I had a team of people there kind of supporting me. And I think I played better when I was in that environment. And I often look back now and I think, would I have benefited from probably maybe going to the States and going down that route? Possibly I would have. But at the time, when I finished school, there weren't that many people going to the States at the time. My mum and dad were quite sort of, I think you should go to UCD and get your degree from UCD. So there was a little bit of that. But by the time it came around to Connor, kind of things had changed. A lot more people were going to the States. And, if I look back as a kind of a regret, not really a regret, but I think maybe I would have benefited from the college experience in the States. That team sort of environment, I think, would have suited me. But look, no regrets. So I did it for 2 years there, and then I went to UCD and did my degree. And but I still continued to play a lot while I was in UCD. So the summers or the holidays, I would have been away playing. And obviously, I played hugely in that whole period in the Irish domestic circuit. So, and I was very successful in the home events, the Irish Close. I won it 5 times in a row, and generally won all of those kind of local events that we have here over that period, which I think we don't really have the same kind of thing really now in the summer here. So there was a huge kind of local tournament tennis scene in Ireland at the time, and players would come from all over the place. There would be a huge English contingent would come over and play, Australians from everywhere really. And at the time, I guess the tournaments had a lot of sponsorship back then. They were sponsored by the drinks company, so Heineken, Carlsberg would have been the big sponsors then, and the prize money was really good actually. So it was quite kind of a lucrative circuit, June, July, August in Ireland, going around and playing all the tournaments. So and they were enjoyable, they were fun too. So yeah, and the standard, as I say, was good because there were a lot of players came from abroad and played as well. So I really enjoyed that element too.
No, there's a lot there that I'm kind of interested in, and I was going to ask about that US college kind of. I guess it wasn't such a kind of prominent thing at the time. That was kind of an option for you, but I was interested to ask about that because I know you did then go to UCD and kept playing, but is it on that kind of the domestic tennis and playing all through the summer and all those tournaments of the Irish domestic tournaments? Because I know at that, I guess it would have been a similar time, maybe like your Owen Casey, that kind of thing. Like there would have been a lot of the guys and girls kind of playing a lot of that. So like, what do you think's changed? I guess you mentioned a couple of things, but what do you think has changed in that respect to now when that isn't really the case in the same way?
Well, I think sponsorship is a really big thing, right? So I think there aren't the sponsors there anymore to put up the money for those events. I mean, you're talking literally from the 1st of June to sort of the end of August. There was pretty much a tournament every week back then, and the prize money was really good. You're talking about 1,800 to 1,000 a week for winning the singles, plus more money for doubles and mixed doubles. So it attracted people to play. like anything like that, if people are playing in it, it kind of breeds the event. And most of those tournaments also had, the tag-on events where they had, the Class 2 event or the veterans event, and they had all that other stuff going along. So they became big events, not just for tennis, but for socially as well. And that seems to have died a little bit, which is a pity. I mean, you even see it in the junior tournaments a little bit now. It's not the same as it was, I'm going to say, back in the day. But there was a much more kind of social element, I think, to tennis tournaments back then, whereas now it's pretty, fairly people just drop off their kids at the tournament, and as in they pick them up straight after the match and they're gone. Whereas back in those days, you would have been left at the club for the day and see you later at 6 o'clock or whatever. So it's a little bit different. But in terms of the senior tournaments, sponsorship, I think, has been the thing that's really kind of killed them off a little bit. I know there are still some events out there, but it doesn't seem to be anything like the level it was back in the kind of 80s, 90s when I was playing them, for sure.
No, and I guess what you say on the junior events as well, like that's something that I would have heard from a lot of people, that those junior events were kind of a highlight, like a big highlight for those people back when they were younger, and they, as you say, that they'd spend the day out and with their friends and play a match during the day, and it'd be a huge thing. Whereas that's not, for various reasons, that's not the kind of the case now.
If I look at my friend group now, so who are my closest friends now, they're all tennis friends. Actually, they're the people who I've remained kind of close to and friendly with, are the crew I hung out with in my junior tennis days. So it's a pity, I think, that's been lost a little bit. I have children who play some of the tournaments now as well, like that, and they've made some friends through tennis, but I just don't see that it's the same. Head down to the tennis club and hang out there for the day, and maybe that's not the right way to do it either, but I guess it's just times are different now. I think people are busier, more scheduled, maybe got 20 other things that they're racing off to go to, compared to how it used to be back then. And I think people are a lot more sort of coached and arranged now than they used to be, whereas back in those days you'd go down to the club, you'd be messing around, you'd play on the wall, you might go out in the court and play with somebody else for 20 minutes. There'd be a lot of other interaction rather than just playing your match, then getting out of there and maybe having a private lesson with somebody. So it's a different environment now.
That's another topic that I was kind of interested to touch on, was that idea of coaching. And I guess like perhaps when you were younger it wasn't all about coaching, whereas now it kind of there's a lot of coaching, and there's a lot less chance to compete.
A lot less chance to compete. And I think that's something that, and I know Tennis Ireland looking at this now, they brought out this new Tennis Ireland tour now, and it's obviously a pity nothing has happened in the last 12 months. Really, it's a shame, because I think that's something that's really critical, is match play, and there definitely isn't enough of it here in Ireland. If you compare it to the UK setup, and certainly Conor would have gone over and got involved in that a lot when he was a junior, in the winter time when you're down in Limerick. And it's a little bit different now. They do have some weekend events, but certainly when Conor was playing, there was nothing junior wise going on, outside of the summer kind of tournament season. So he went over and played a lot of weekend events in the UK, and they have just humongous number of tournaments on all the time, every week of the year. And I'm hoping that Tennis Ireland tour, junior tour program will increase the amount of match play the juniors have. So I think you just learn so much from playing matches. You can practice till the cows come home, but really the proof is in the pudding in the match. So, and you learn a lot about yourself, and learn a lot about winning and losing. You have to learn to lose too.
Yeah, no, I do think, as you say, that's such a big ingredient that we do need in kind of the tennis environment, almost, of having a lot more competition. And obviously, as you say, like the new tour coming in, and I think that is something that's going to be brought in more, which is really good to see. Like, it is definitely a really important part of.
Really important.
Yeah.
And look, it's difficult. We're a small country, small pool of people, but I think it's definitely doable. And facilities wise, I think things are improving a lot there. There's a lot of clubs being really progressive on course surfaces and that sort of thing, and that's something that I think has been damaging to Irish tennis. The whole artificial grass thing over the last 30 years, it's definitely not. And I say that now, the court we had at home in Limerick was an artificial grass tennis court. So I did play a lot on artificial grass. But if you look at the continent or any other country in the world, nobody plays on artificial grass. It's not considered a tennis surface at all. In fact, the only other place I saw it was Japan, bizarrely enough. they seem to use it a bit over there because they get a lot of rain. But there's been a lot of advances in court technology and all that. I'm really happy to see there's quite a lot of clubs now starting to put down the all-weather clay, and other options there. So and hopefully we'll see more bubbles and more indoor stuff going in, because I think that's really, really critical. I can't stress that enough, the indoor facilities, because I know playing with my own children down in our local club, nobody wants to go down on a Saturday morning in January and play, in the wind and the rain. It's not conducive to wanting to play, and doesn't encourage people. So, that's, I think, something that's critical really for development.
Yeah, clay courts, indoor courts, kind of the big two takeaways.
They're the big two takeaways there, I think.
And just to move on a little bit then, and I guess you mentioned kind of the setup in England a bit, and I know that at some point kind of during your career and when you were still playing, you did work over in Millfield School in England, and kind of you coached a bit there. So how was that experience working there and in tennis?
Yeah, it was really good. What happened was after I finished UCD, I played for another couple of years, and I started to struggle a bit with injuries. And in '97, I think it was, I had a fairly serious, I had an issue with my foot for about a year. I was getting a lot of pain in it. I was getting physio, tendonitis, cortisone injections, and really struggling with it. And eventually I ended up having an operation on it. And they found a little piece of bone that had become dislodged and was sticking into a tendon. So there was a reason for the pain. So they took that out. But in those days, I guess the rehab isn't quite as good as it is now. I was put in a hard cast for 3 months. Came out of that. Took me quite a while to kind of get back to stuff. And in the meantime, I decided I'd do my coaching exams. I did the level 1 and the level 2. And then I felt I wasn't really quite ready to go back out and play. So an opportunity came up to go over to Millfield School, which is over in Somerset. And it was kind of a coaching / hitting role, I suppose. So Millfield School, for those who don't know, is a kind of a very well-known sports secondary school over in the UK, and would be well known for producing kind of Olympic swimmers, athletes, that type of thing. Facilities are ridiculous. They're like a university campus, an Olympic pool, 3 indoor tennis courts, gym rooms, the whole lot. So, nothing like you'd see anywhere here. So I thought, look, that'd be a great opportunity to go over, try and get my kind of fitness back a bit. And also to I was sort of coming towards the end of my tennis playing days really anyway. So to see if coaching might be something that I would be interested in. So I went over there and I spent 18 months working with their kind of performance programs. They had some performance players there. And in fact, Connor was actually there for some of the time that I was there. He went over and was a student there he did his A-levels there actually. So he was there for a little bit of the time that I was there. And I spent a lot of time just hitting with the good players, working with some of them there. And also they had a kind of a junior school there as well. So working with some of the younger kids as well. So look, I really enjoyed my time over there, but what it kind of showed me by the end of it was that coaching wasn't for me. I didn't have the patience for it. I'll say no more. I just not patient enough. I was fine to do the hitting and all of that, but I could get quite frustrated. And anyway, look, coaching wasn't for me. So I had done at that point. I decided I'd give the tour one more final whirl, and I went back out for maybe another 4 or 5 months and played. And I was struggling then at that stage with a neck injury. I'd had a car accident the year before, and I got a whiplash. And my neck was giving me a lot of trouble. And I said, look, at this stage, after the foot and the neck, I think it's time to call it a day and get a real job. So I had done my degree in economics and French in UCD, and I decided to give the kind of office / business world a try. So I started that in 1999. I started working for a company down the IFSC. And I've moved a couple of times since, but so I'm still working in financial services now, that much later. But in terms of coaching, no, I haven't really stayed involved in it. My own kids play a bit now. I play with them. They probably say that I'm quite a strict coach, so patience level wouldn't be great there either. But so no, I haven't stayed involved in a coaching perspective. I am still very involved in tennis in terms of, and I don't know if you're aware of the international club, which I'm president of at the moment. So the international club is like, it's a club where I'm president of the IC of Ireland, I should say. So the international club was established back in the 1920s over in the UK as a kind of a camaraderie and friendship club for people who've played internationally and people who played overseas for their country. So the first IC was set up over in the UK back in the 1920s, followed by kind of France and the USA got involved then. And Ireland set up its own IC then in the 1997. So it's nearly 25 years ago, set up by Peter Ledbetter and Brian Lawler, two former Davis Cup players. So I'm actively involved in that now as president. So what the IC does, we play fixtures against other IC clubs every year. So maybe 4 or 5 fixtures a year. We'll either host clubs coming over, or we'll go over to other countries and play against their clubs. And it's mostly a kind of an older crew, I suppose, a veterans type scene. And we've members from all sorts of backgrounds, really. The one prerequisite is that you must have represented Ireland at some levels. That'd be either junior, senior, or veteran. So that's how you become a member. So that's my kind of tennis involvement these days. So it's more off the court. But I'm still actively playing. I'm still playing league, Winter League, Summer League, all of that kind of stuff with Monkstown Tennis Club in Dublin. I'm still enjoying it. I enjoy the doubles more these days, more than singles. So yeah, that's just an age thing.
Yeah, it's great to hear about the international club. I wasn't really aware of that, but it's good to hear about that, and obviously that you are still involved in tennis a good bit. So that international club, I guess, is not so much right now, but in terms of what kind of stuff are you putting on maybe like during the year? Is that going to be there's a lot going on for you?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a disaster. Last year, obviously, we didn't have any fixtures at all, and that was the same globally for all the international clubs. They didn't have any fixtures, and we really hoped that we'd be able to do some this year, but it's not looking likely. So I don't know if you're aware of the Potter Cup, which Ireland won in 2019. Our men's team won the men's Potter Cup. So the Potter Cup is an IC, an international club event. Okay. So we were hoping that was going to happen again. It was cancelled last year. We were hoping it was going to happen this year in May, but I've just heard in the last couple of weeks it looks like it's going to be pushed to October now. So I'm hoping it goes ahead in October, but we'll see. But other than that, it looks like this year, to be honest, I think we're probably just going to be having internal events if we can. So hopefully maybe September, October, we'll have an IC of Ireland. And we try and do that every year anyway. We tie it in with our AGM and have kind of food and play tennis as a group. And that's, I think, probably the best we can hope for this year, and hope for 2022, which will be our 25th anniversary, that we'll have been able to host some clubs and play some matches against people.
Good stuff. And just a couple more questions. I guess firstly, what do you think was your best win at any stage throughout tennis career? What is there kind of a best win that would stand out to you?
Oh, a best win. Well, I mean, the best tournament wins obviously were the Irish close. I don't know. I mean, the most famous person I ever played was probably Amanda Krutzer, who would have been. I think her top ranking was 5, and I played her in Fed Cup one year. She was playing for South Africa. It was the first year South Africa were let back into the Fed Cup, and they had to start kind of lower down in the Euro Africa zone to build themselves back up. And we played against them, and I lost that match. So I can't claim a scalp over her or anything like that. But I guess my 2 ITF finals, I beat some good players along the way there, none that anybody here would know. So no top name players like that. But I guess my junior Wimbledon doubles win, and then obviously the domestic wins that I had.
Yeah, and in terms of some advice that if you could go back and give yourself some advice, maybe your teenage self, maybe like your 16-year-old self going off to Japan for the Fed Cup, what advice do you think you'd give to yourself back then if you could?
So, well, my late dad used to say, youth is wasted on the young. And I think I find myself saying that to my own children now. You don't realize when you're a young person, you probably don't soak things up as much as you should. It's only when you get a bit older and you look back and you go, wow, that was amazing. What a fantastic opportunity I had to do those things, and great times that were had. And it's funny, I was talking to somebody recently about, they were saying they were having leaving cert nightmares still. And I said, well, actually my nightmares are always tennis nightmares. So my recurring bad dream is that I wake up in the night and I haven't practiced. I have to go play a match and I haven't practiced, haven't prepared. So it's very deep in my psyche, tennis, and I think always will be. So yeah, so it's had a huge impact on my life, and all for the positive. I think it's a fantastic sport. We can keep playing it forever. And I certainly have no regrets about anything that I did. I think, if I was going back again, I think, like Conor, I think got the benefit of that a little bit of, having that experience of, going out on the tour on your own really just doesn't work for anybody. I don't think anybody can do that. So if I was going back again, with the benefit of hindsight, would have done that differently. And maybe I would have gone down the college tennis route in America. I think I probably would have done quite well at that, and I would have thrived in that kind of team environment. So I think they'd be the main thing looking back. But at the end of the day, no regrets. And I had a great career, and a lot of fantastic memories and friends out of it as well. So yeah, only good things.
And I guess that kind of leads me on to a final question of, well, what was your favorite thing about tennis?
Oh, my favorite thing about tennis, I think it's a great sport overall. I know I'm biased, but when I watch sport on television, tennis I think it's the best sport. From in terms of athleticism, thinking, independence, all of that stuff. Team events, you can hide a little bit or you can rest for a little bit. You can't do that in tennis. So it's a fantastic sport mentally, as well as physically. So yeah, so look, it's, to my mind, it's the best sport, but I am a bit biased.
Well, I don't think I'll agree with you on that one, but maybe a bit biased as well. Yeah, no, good stuff. Really good. And I think, Gina, that's about it for that. A big thanks for coming on and talking. I really enjoyed getting some of those stories and some of those thoughts on, I guess, Irish tennis and how things maybe have changed a bit. Really interesting. And yeah, no, a big thanks for coming on.
No problem, Adam. Thanks a million for having me.
A huge thanks again to Gina Niland for her time, for coming on to the podcast. It was really great to get to chat. I think Gina has a really good tennis story, a really good journey, a lot of good tennis experiences along the way that she shared with us. And I also really enjoyed getting her insights into the game as well, especially her insights into Irish tennis. A big thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you did enjoy it, I'd really encourage you to comment, to subscribe, to leave a review for the show. It really does help, so a big thank you in advance, and also to share the podcast. I hope you're all doing well and looking forward to getting back to tennis in just a couple of weeks as much as I am. Until the next episode, I've been Adam, and goodbye.